You've been learning about value investing, finance, just regular investment for a while now, but you don't know where to go next. You're getting confused about the vast amount of information on the internet. You don't want to waste your time on crap information. You want good information and reliable information. In this series of videos on value investing and finance education, you will find those answers to those questions and much more. My name is Jason Rivera. Welcome to Value Investing and Finance Education. Hey, Jason here. Today I want to talk about this statement, quote, value stocks have never been this cheap, end quote, from a Bank of America equities analyst. I guess is probably the best title. I want to talk about that statement today and why that's insane. First off, do we get to that? I need to let you know this series is available as a podcast anywhere in the world for free, and as the I Love Value Investing podcast. It's available on all major podcasting platforms: SoundCloud, iTunes, Anchor, Stitcher, and more, anywhere in the world for free. So I don't really pay attention much to financial news in the normal sense. I do this to stay away from noise, to focus on my own opinions, don't focus on emotion, that kind of stuff, which is what the financial news is geared towards. It's geared to getting your emotions going. This means I don't watch CNBC, I don't watch Fox Business, I don't really look at CNBC website, Fox Business website, Market Watch very much. I do know what's going on because I have Google Alerts set up and I scan the news when it comes up, but I don't really pay much attention to it. That is until I saw this headline from CNBC that said, quote, value stocks have never been this cheap, unquote. And then the rest of the headline says, Bank of America says. And I was like, that's insane. So, of course, I clicked on it, which is what the job of the headline writer is to do. So good job, headline writer, who did that. So Savita Subramanian, who is the head of U.S. equity and quantitative strategy at Bank of America, says that value has never been this cheap versus momentum is the actual full quote. So there's lesson number one, why you need to watch what the media says. Because the two headlines are completely different. One says the value stocks have never been this cheap. One says the value has never been this cheap compared to momentum stocks. Two major differences. This is why you need to be careful with the media and consuming financial media. Two completely different things. That second statement, while probably true, he's a quantitative guy. I don't focus on quant stuff. So I assume his and Bank of America's research is correct. But it's still insane. Let me illustrate why. Here we go. Okay, so here's the article. Here is the S&P 500 ratio. Again, I hate the PE ratio, but this is one way to see the value of the entire market. Only one, two, three, four times in history, going back to the 1870s, have stocks been more expensive on, again, this is a relative valuation, on a relative basis than they are now. One was a panic in the 1890s that caused, I believe, it was a depression or a recession. The other times were in the late 90s, early 2000s dot-com bubble, and those kind of roll into each other. And then the crash in 2007, 2008, 2009. That's it. So on a relative basis, This stocks are insanely overpriced right now. Only, again, 4 times in history going back to 1870 have stocks been more overpriced, and this is the whole S&P 500. The median is actually just under 15. So that's an overvaluation on an average basis going back to the 1870s of what, 35, 40% off the top of my head, something like that. This is just one example of how insane this is. Here's another. This is the Shiller PE ratio. This is a little bit different than the regular PE ratio. This tries to take some of the variance out of the PE ratio. To my understanding, it focuses on 10-year periods instead of the every year kind of PE ratio. But again, even in this, only 1-2 times ever going back to the 1870s have stocks been more of a value than they are now. One was Black Tuesday, right before the Great Depression hit. And the other was in the 2000s, actually, the dot-com bubble. The median here is 15.8. What we're at now is 30.02. So almost double the average price over the last, what was that, 120 years-ish? No, 140 years-ish. So this is a perfect illustration. Let me get back to the main screen here. This is a wonderful illustration of why when you see somebody talk valuation being cheap, if they compare it to something else. Because if both comparisons are insane, it doesn't matter. You have to look on an absolute basis as well. I use relative valuations. I do not rely on them. I use the intrinsic valuations and I use the relative valuations mostly to compare two valuations, to value a company against one of its competitors or a stock I already own. To compare something like value stocks to momentum stocks and saying now is the cheapest time relative to each other, it's the cheapest time ever to buy value stocks, is an insane comparison, in my opinion. Insane, because stock markets, this guy knows it. Stocks have been going straight up for about 10 years. So valuations are high. So if something is here, but relative to this, it's here, yes, it's going to look cheap, but what if the median is down here? You have to be able to compare these things. You have to be able to know where your source is coming from. You have to be able to know if the comparison is truthful, because in my opinion, this is so blatantly ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense to compare these two things when, again, valuations are up here, median is down here, and you're comparing, it's comparing apples and oranges, in my opinion. Completely different things. Yes, especially the headline from CNBC. Value stocks have never been cheaper, says Bank of America. That's, again, I know what their job is. Their job is to get clicks, but that is an insanely false. Yes, he technically said it, but they forgot the rest of the quote. This is why nobody believes the media anymore, and this is why I don't follow the media, especially when it comes to financial stuff, because they play these kind of games. Again, I know this is part of their job, this advertising, marketing to a degree, but this is ridiculously false advertising, in my opinion. It's a completely different headline compared to the article. It says two completely different things. This is why you need to be careful with consuming financial media. This is why you need to be able to compare, to understand what the comparisons are and if they make sense. This is why you can't rely just wholly on relative valuations, because it's absolutely insane. If you're telling people, and again, I'm assuming this guy leads some of their, or helps lead some of their, or it's not CNBC's, Bank of America's research arms, their customers are getting most likely ripped off. Because again, they'll just see relative to momentum stocks,
value stocks are the cheapest they've ever been, but they might not understand the context. This is, again, another reason you need to be careful with financial advisors as well, or financial planners, or whatever their kind of designation or certification is. If you can't trust what they're doing is right for you, you need to be very careful and likely stay away from them. If you're buying stocks now based on one of these kind of recommendations, you're going to get hammered at some point, sooner rather than later. I haven't bought a stock in 4 years, almost 5 years now, because valuations are so insanely high. Again, I'm at the other extreme of the spectrum. I understand that. But to say something like, to have a headline says value stocks have never been cheaper is ridiculous by CNBC. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Any other kind of ridiculous things you've seen about value investing or stocks or investing in general lately? I would love to see it. I would love to analyze the situation if possible and show you sources of how insane the situation is. If I can find sources, I would love to help you with this, because frankly, yes, it's funny and I'm trying to make light of this and I'm trying to do it in an entertaining way, but it's also insanely important for your future as well. Because if you trust, again, these kinds of banks and these kinds of financial advisors and brokerages and all that stuff, but you don't know how to tell if they're trustworthy or not, or if their comparisons are fair or not, or if they're frankly giving you a line of shit, you need to be very careful. Because I hope this perfectly illustrates how crazy the financial markets are right now. Is this headline from CNBC, a reputed financial media source with the headline, "Value stocks have never been cheaper," says Bank of America, when the content actually says value stocks have never been cheaper compared to momentum stocks, which again is another comparison that isn't fair, because valuations have gone straight up for 10 years and they're at or near all-time highs. The only other times that have consistently beat the current valuations in terms of the Shiller PE or the regular PE for the S&P 500 were right before giant crashes. Great Depression, tech bubble in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, housing market crash 2007, 2008. Those are the main ones that these valuations come right before. So again, I'm not saying that a correction or a recession or a major stock market drop is going to happen anytime soon. I don't know. It's sooner rather than later, because we're in the longest bull market in history. But I don't know when it's going to happen. But this is how you protect yourself, is with knowledge and skills and knowing what to look for. So I hope this helps. Again, I'd love to hear your stories. If you found any weird stuff on the internet about value investing or finance or anything like this, I'd love to take a look at it, because I find this interesting and a great way to teach stuff too, because you can't always look at positive examples. You have to look at stuff to watch out for, in my opinion, as well. And this is something you definitely need to watch out for. So I hope this helps. Make sure to like, love, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're notified anytime we release a new video. And I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great day.